certain seeds, toxic seeds that we've planted, have not yet borne their poisonous fruit. The amount of trauma, the half the population that's on psychiatric meds, the third of children who are abused, the amount of social isolation. And when we're immersed in a world that is portrayed to us on screens, it doesn't seem real. Like, that's why I think some of the horrors happening on Earth have lost their shock value, because they are indistinguishable from the horrors that we see in the movie theater that are fake. Absolutely heinous atrocities are happening to a minute in front of our eyes. Like, we develop a defense mechanism against that. And that defense mechanism then applies to anything on a screen. And it's hard to connect with the physicality of what's really going on. It's all a show. And that is another reason why the work that you do at Sacred Sons is so valuable. It's very physical. It's very gritty. And the information that men receive there is not what we think of as information in the information age, where it can be reduced to data. There's a lot of information that is not ideas and is not data. And that is what you're bringing. It's important. It's fed me. And I wish you the continued courage to keep bringing it forth in the world.
Peace, brothers. Adam Jackson here. Just want to send a little gratitude to every single one of you out there who is listening and who has been tuning in to this journey of masculine alchemy with Sacred Sons. Let me ask you something. As you are listening to this podcast, do you ever find yourself inspired? Do you ever find yourself wanting to live in a new way, to live in an honest way, to take ownership of your life? Not just to be a player in the game in your life, but to take ownership and responsibility for your full life. If you're looking for those tools, if you're wondering, I get asked all the time, do you have book recommendations? What other information can I dive into in order to embody healthy and honest masculinity? At Sacred Sons, we have the EMC, the Embodied Masculine Course. Sacred Sons has become the gold standard for men's work training around the world. And with this training, you can learn how to transform your life into consistent, grounded, honest masculinity. We've taken our leadership training, time-tested frameworks of embodied masculine archetypes, and we've distilled it into this incredible course. It's self-paced. It's 7 modules on the pillars of embodiment. And the EMC is for my brothers out there who maybe they're not ready for the full 10-week deep dive plus the threshold experience of doing the full leadership training. But if you need these tools now, if you're going through it in relationship, or maybe you're thriving and you're just looking for those codes, looking for that next level up, the Embodied Masculine Course is for you. Men, it's time. If you are interested, please go to sacredsons.com, click on leadership training, look for the Embodied Masculine Course. And for my bros who are ready for the deep dive, if you know that you want to train with the core of this movement, with the leaders of Sacred Sons, we have Prime Leadership. This is an accelerated path. It's a 4-day intensive, 10 weeks online, and an in-person threshold. This approach to leadership training is geared towards men wanting to train with myself, with Jason McKenzie, with Kale Ka'alekahi, with Kevin Walton. And our next in-person Prime Leadership is coming up this August 3rd through 6th on the East Coast in Poconos, Pennsylvania. My brothers on the East Coast who have been waiting for this training, it's time. Again, go to sacredsons.com, click on leadership training, look for Prime Leadership, look for the Embodied Masculine Course, and we will see you there. Much love, fam. Grand Rising Soul Family, Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Sacred Sons, we have an impactful and courageous guest today by the name of Charles Eisenstein. This is going to be our 3rd time circling up here and having a conversation on Sacred Sons podcast. Today we're going to drop into heart forward leadership. We're going to talk about what leadership looks like in 2023. And so with that, our guest today, he's a writer and speaker. His books include The Ascent of Humanity, Sacred Economics, The more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, and climate, a new story. Just like think about those titles. Is this the type of man that we want in leadership? And so with that, our guest, he's in service to life and he's not afraid to fight. Please welcome Charles Eisenstein.
Hey, Adam. Honored to be here. And happy to dive right in.
Yeah, man, let's dive right in. You've had a major life change. Your services have been requested. Could you just please tell me a little bit about the current work that you're doing?
Yeah. Mostly what I'm doing now, I still have, some of my other work I still keep doing, but mostly I'm advising the presidential campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and pretty deep in it, Yeah.
Yeah, just when you think about the story arc of your life as Charles, as a young boy, I had connections to the Kennedy assassination. I did a presentation on it in college even. Did you ever think that your services would be useful in this way at this stage? I've had fantasies for many years, not about being president, but about making speeches. Here's what I would say if I were running for president. Yes.
And so now I have the opportunity to actually contribute to what is being said by a candidate for the presidency. So, because I actually think I would make a terrible president. I have trouble managing a team of 5 people, let alone a campaign or a, massive bureaucracy.
But you are a wizard with words, I got to tell you.
Yeah. So yeah. And I'm bringing not only my skill with words, but also everything that I've written about and thought about and spoken about.
Yes.
And developed for many years. And I never thought, I never thought that there would be room in mainstream politics for what I bring. It just seemed like a separate universe. So I was pretty amazed that I got drawn into this and that, at least to some degree, what I offer is received. I'm not saying that I'm the main influence or anything like that, but, I'm in the field and it's pretty amazing and for me, kind of hopeful.
Yeah, I got to say, for me as well, when I heard the news, I felt hopeful to know that a sacred son, a true sacred son, was out there with that proximity to this level of leadership. So I want to drop in more on kind of how you view leadership, how you view what I'm calling heart-led leadership. And, just as we're dropping into this conversation, I'd also just like to check in with you as a human being on this beautiful earth, with everything that you're experiencing, with everything happening within you and around you. Charles, what is most alive within you?
Well, maybe I'll talk about leadership a little bit. Mm-hmm. So one thing that's alive actually is running an online program called the Sanity Project, which draws from my experience of, during COVID, of wondering, has the world gone crazy or have I gone crazy? And how do I stay sane in a world that is going crazy? And, I think most people can agree that it is kind of a mad world. What is taken for granted as normal and acceptable is actually unacceptable. It's intolerable, the way that human beings live, and what's happening to the environment, what's happening to women, what's happening to children, what's happening to men. There's from almost any lens, the horrifying things that are happening that we just kind of don't even recognize or acknowledge. That is a kind of an insanity. So anyway, that's one thing that's alive. And interestingly enough, a recent call we had on that program was about leadership. And so one of the things that I said leadership kind of has gotten a bad name, when we're supposed to be non-patriarchal and non-hierarchical, and because so many bad things have been done in the name of leadership, maybe leadership is itself a bad thing. But for me, I want to more reclaim it and resuscitate it and call it to its higher order. And so for me, a leader is somebody who is faithful to a vision, to a possibility that might be new, that needs somebody to steward it, to guard it, and to draw others into it. So a leader is not fundamentally interested in power. A leader is in service to something larger than himself.
Yeah, to the fulfillment of the vision.
Right. And those who also have that vision and respect the leader who is stewarding that vision and has brought that vision to the awareness are going to trust that leader. Like that's so the respect and the authority comes not from power over, not from, well, if you don't do as I say, you're fired or you're court-martialed, but it comes from an earned trust and a recognition of, oh yes, I know you see something maybe better than I do, and I trust you to steward that and to hold that, and please tell me what I can do to contribute to this vision because you see it really well. So that leads to my second, and I hope this isn't like too cerebral here, but my second conception of leadership is a leader makes opportunities available to others to deliver their gifts.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what we call that? Or you know what you've called that in the past? Interdependence. I love this term interdependence that you've kind of brought forth. And that's what both of those definitions bring up for me. It's like we are actually interdependent. Simultaneously, we're also intersovereign. Right. we have an intersovereignty that requires the dependence upon others. Could you speak a little bit, to maybe what that brings up?
Yeah. So I guess here's another aspect of leadership. How do you get a clear vision of something that involves many people? It's not like you sit alone in a room or you go on your vision quest. And I mean, sometimes you get a vision that way, but we're not separate individuals. So what we can see borrows from the seeing of others. And I become clearer on my vision when I am connected to you and your vision of the same thing. So a leader then also has an importance, is an essential function of a listener.
Yes.
You have to understand that you can't see it all. And so a talent of a leader is to be able to communicate, to listen, to gather information through many sets of eyes and ears. And then you have the real vision. So if you think that it's all up to you to have the vision, then your vision is going to atrophy. It's going to become this stunted version of what it could be.
I got a little bit of experience in cultivating a vision for this brotherhood and for bringing men together. And I would even say that if we were able to decompartmentalize and come into the fullness of who we are as beings, as sensory beings, I would say it's a full sensory experience. Yes, in the seeing, yes, in the listening, but also in the feeling, in the touch. How does it taste? How does it actually feel when we've arrived? How does it feel to be on this journey of this vision? It's a full sensory experience.
Yeah, it's not just communicated with words. Like you learn something about another man, about another human being, and about yourself when you work with somebody.
Yeah.
Like when you till soil together, when you build something together. Because, people say an awful lot of things that sound good, but when it actually comes to the body, you learn another truth. What's someone actually willing to be uncomfortable in service to? I mean, here you and I are sitting in a chair right now,
Yeah.
like in total comfort. We're not pushing our capacities that clarify what we really care about. And here we are, on an electronic medium.
Of course, and we're in the ancient future, and it's important that we don't demonize the technology, but that we utilize it for the benefit of the vision,
and we recognize what it's useful for and what it isn't.
Oh,
also,
yeah. I think there's a long list of what it's not useful for. Mostly, I see it showing up in my children as they're like, my 1-year-old. He literally wakes up and he hands me my phone in the morning. Like, wow. As a father, there couldn't be a more disheartening sentiment. I have a 1-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, I have an 8-year-old, and I have one on the way, Charles, and then I'm done. I got one more on the way.
Congratulations.
And, I'm feeling very blessed in my life and abundant. And I just want to, just for the technology piece, there is benefit in it. And maybe could you speak to it? How do you see that as having some benefit?
Yeah, I think that every creation of the human mind has a purpose, like a higher purpose, has something that it wants to be. That our attraction to creating it comes not only from the desires of power and profit, but also from an orientation toward a future that resonates with our creative powers. So I always look for, what is, like, ask the question, what does this want to be? What are you here for? And like many human inventions and discoveries, technology can be abused, just like drugs and alcohol can be abused, but that doesn't mean that they have no purpose. All technology, not just electronic technology, but for me to understand what it is for, I kind of like to look at what it's not for. What are we using it for that it should be for? Like, what needs are we fulfilling with technology that should be met in other ways? Because the technology doesn't actually meet the need. It's like a drug that temporarily satisfies the desire without meeting the deep need. Right. So when it comes to social media, and a lot of communication technology, the unmet need is for community, it's for belonging, it's for connection. It's to be embedded in a matrix of relationships and stories that tell you who you are.
It's to come back to all the senses. It's to come back to bring those senses all together in a real experience.
Yeah, and in a relational experience.
Yes.
And in fact, senses are, that's how we establish relationships. That is how we relate, through our senses. Those are the inlets for the world and for other beings. So, if you are not living in a traditional village where you know every feature of the landscape as part of a generational memory, where, this is where grandma met her first boyfriend, who then died tragically. And, there's a whole story associated with when people are based on land and in place for generations. The land isn't just a set of topographical features. It's also woven into a kind of a mythology, a set of stories. That's such a deep human need to be able to be embedded in that way, and we don't have that. Right. And we don't have the experience usually. I see my neighbor drive out, from his driveway, And here's this human being. I don't know the name of his father.
Right.
I don't know anything about his triumphs and failures in life. I don't know, how he sings, or if he sings, or how he dances, or how he builds fire, or anything really. So I feel kind of alone, and this is a new human experience. Most people living in a traditional nomadic tribe or a village, they knew everything about the people and the plants and the animals, what they sound like, what they smell like, where they live. And so you're embedded in a matrix of being, and you are known that well yourself as well.
That's an important piece of the belonging.
Yes. So we don't have that. And so instead, we have a substitute. You can kind of be known by posting on Instagram. You kind of have the feeling of being intimately involved in the lives of celebrities who share their salacious details of their lives online.
You could call it the digital landscape.
Right. And it's like these virtual places that you're kind of familiar with, but they change all the time and there's no stability. But, at least it's better than just sitting alone in your bedroom.
Is it?
Well, people are lonely, and they're trying to meet, they're doing the best they can with what's available. It's not like you're a bad person for being addicted to social media. It's like, what is the crying unmet need here that drives the addiction? That's what to look at.
I had this thought recently. We have the capacity to remember everything, utilizing technologies as an extension of ourselves. We can remember everything. But is it actually better than when we had to utilize the depth of our memory as human beings to know the way, to know what season we're in, to know where to gather food, when we knew that instinctually and not as an act of memorization? Is it actually better that we can remember everything? Because I think that pulls us further apart from connection. It separates us, knowing that, hey, I don't have to remember because I can just use this external device, right?
I can look it up. I can look it up online.
I don't have to be with my brother Charles because I can go read his essays anytime, right? No, I actually want to be in the essence of my brother Charles to really feel him. And so that's why I'm saying, is it better than being? It's better than isolation, certainly.
So there's a kind of a fraudulence to electronic media and to what we call information in general. Information being something that can be reduced to pixels and bits, that can be converted into data. The conceit of modernity and of the information age is that all information can be rendered into data. But as you're saying, that's just not true. You cannot render my essence into data, no matter how complete of VR data set you accumulate about my every breath and my every move, and you make a representation of that. Something will still be missing that you would get if you were in physical presence with me. And that we have to recognize that digital representation and digitally mediated relationship will never actually bring us back home. Will never bring us the connection that we yearn for. And so with that, we can say, okay, well, what is it useful for? And, maybe it is useful to make plans to meet somebody.
To create, I think it's a beautiful platform to create art. You've recently created a few short films, that are animated and that utilize technology, that use your voice. I mean, there is always beauty, amidst anything. I see, people making incredible sculptures out of trash, out of recycled goods, out of recycled plastics. They can make beautiful art. And this is the essence of what it means to be human, to be able to create order out of chaos, to be able to find the beauty within.
Right. Yeah. It's ultimately, I think that this higher attraction we have to invention actually is a yearning to extend the realm of our creativity to create beauty in new ways and in new realms. The purpose of technology is actually art.
And, one of the ways that literally it's impacted me, I'm just returning from an experience I had on Gambier Island in Vancouver, British Columbia. We had 60 men out there, our first time having a gathering of this size in Canada. And I was thinking to myself up there, like, wow, the ability that I have to travel, it's greater than probably all my ancestors combined. And I mean that by how far I've been able to travel with that frequency. I'm sure my ancestors migrated. I'm sure they traveled long distances. But with the frequency that I'm able to do it, technology has allowed us to experience so much in a single lifetime. And that has got to be valuable.
But, in former times, we didn't have to travel so much because many of the things that we're traveling for existed much more closely. Now, today we have kind of a scattered tribe around the world.
Yes.
And the reason that the tribe is so scattered is that most people in most places now have been dispossessed of their spiritual sovereignty, of their sense of belonging, and we're just now at a stage where we're wanting to reweave the matrix together again.
Yeah. And
so we need these technologies of communication and transportation in order to bring ourselves back together again, with the goal of someday we won't need to travel because all that we travel for will be available, except maybe we go occasionally on some deep pilgrimage.
Right.
Because you're right, people thousands of years ago, they did travel sometimes long distances, but it was an adventure. I mean, it was no light undertaking.
And oftentimes there was no going back.
Yeah. Or you might be gone for years.
Yeah.
Or, you might go on a walkabout for months at least in Australia and some other places. But it was uncertain whether you would come back. Yeah. And you would come back changed.
Yeah. And so we're in accelerated times. And so how do we utilize our leadership to slow it down? I think this is something that's being asked for. I think we're all asking for it in different ways. And so I see it in three ways: the land, the food, and the people. You are currently supporting a true environmentalist to potentially be the next leader of our country. This is something that I've been looking forward to. Like, to have someone who's actually about the land, who gave a large part of his service in life to protecting our natural habitat and resources. You're also someone who writes about this. And so, how does that feel to know that we're like just beginning to turn towards the land, even at this highest level?
Yeah, sometimes I hardly dare believe that this is happening.
Yeah.
And also I get to survey just how deeply lost we are, how far from home we are. If RFK Jr. gets elected, that doesn't mean that everything changes overnight.
Of course.
What it means is that 10, 20, 30 years from now, we look back, maybe 50 years from now, maybe 100 years from now, we look back and we say, that is when things began to turn around. That was the peak moment of all of these trends away from life, away from connection. It was the peak of the story of separation. And after that, I think things are going to continue to get worse, actually, in many ways, because certain seeds, toxic seeds that we've planted, have not yet borne their poisonous fruit. There's a lot of healing that Stella, my wife Stella, and I were just talking today about, like the amount of healing on every level, the amount of trauma, the half the population that's on psychiatric meds, and I don't know, I'm not sure if that statistic is correct. It's a lot.
Yeah.
The third of children who are abused, just like the amount of trauma, the amount of PTSD, the amount of chronic illness, the amount of social isolation. We could spend all of our society's efforts on healing and never run out of things to do for generations. And that's, and ecological healing as well, like social healing, personal healing, ecological healing. That could completely occupy us for generations.
I want to throw just a dollop of hope on top, because one of the things that I've witnessed in my work is that when one man heals, we all heal. I also don't believe healing is a linear thing. I don't think it's a one-to-one. I think it's an exponential model. And so as I'm saying, heal the people, heal the land. Is it possible that it's actually, I'm with it, 7 generations before, 7 generations to come. Is it possible that in one generation we can make that turn?
Yeah, we can make the turn. And even if we heal 1% from where we are today, it'll seem like a paradise compared to the world right now. But it can just, in 10 or 20 generations, the level of connection and intimacy and authenticity and enchantment with this world and beauty is just inconceivable to us today. But sometimes you get a glimpse of it. When you see somebody in the full expression of their gift, some of these sculptures you see that people are making out of trash that you just talked about. Like, imagine if everybody were oriented in that way and doing what they did as beautifully as possible with full care and devotion. It seems like a fantasy, but in fact, when you look at where human labor and creativity are devoted right now, most of it does not serve anybody's well-being. Totally.
They serve corporations, at least in where I'm coming from.
Yeah, in that sense, it's like, I call it the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, Yeah. And on the one hand, it's a paradox. On the one hand, it's impossibly distant in the sense that we're not going to get there by running faster. We're not going to get there by trying harder. It's like trying to run to the horizon. No matter how far you run, the horizon is just as far as it ever was. And in fact, from that place of, you mentioned before, slowing down, and people are like, well, there's no time to slow down. This is the urgent moment. We got to speed up. We got to try to work harder and faster. But that ends up replicating the same things that we've created over many generations of doing it always faster, always more efficiently, always at bigger scale. We got to scale up the solutions. And maybe what's required now is the opposite. It's the things that cannot be measured in our metrics of efficiency. It's the things that are neglected when we're in such a hurry to solve the problems that we do not see what the problem actually is.
Do less, more being and less doing. How does that sound?
Paradoxically, I'm actually way busier now than I have ever been. So there are phases, where we're called into intense action.
Absolutely.
Even then, I don't know. I don't think the intensity of the work I'm doing right now is sustainable for me in the long run. Because ultimately, giving and receiving have to be in balance. And our function here as human beings is not only to give, it's not only to create and serve beauty and life. Or you could say that an essential part of our service is to enjoy and appreciate and attend to beauty and life, to praise creation, to enjoy the beauty. I mean, what's the point of creating beauty if it doesn't feed anybody? Like, we have to do that ourselves as well. And creation benefits from our beholding of it and our adoration of it. Like if you were the creator and no one was enjoying your work, you'd be like, what's the point? And the world would turn gray and the world would turn ugly. And that's what's happening. If you look at the modern built environment, you take a walk in New York City. Every beautiful building was built before 1950.
Wow.
I was just at I was on the road, and I walked in the morning. I park my car. I go to this restaurant for breakfast, empty parking lot. I walk out of there an hour later, and the parking lot is full of cars. Like, what is going on here? And they're all like classic cars. Like there was like a 1967 Buick, like 1946 Hudson, and I was just like awestruck by how beautiful these cars were. They built them. There was a kind of an exuberance in their construction. They were more beautiful than they had to be for any utilitarian purpose, and they were more diverse as well. Like, you didn't have to put that much chrome on that car, and it's like, I'm not even sure if we know how anymore. Not like technically, but like spiritually. Do we even know how to make buildings as beautiful as Grand Central Station, to make cars as beautiful as 1958 Lincoln Continental? Like, do we even know how to do that anymore? Do we have it in us anymore? And so this is the impoverishment of our created landscape that is a consequence of our alienation. It's both a cause and an effect of our not fully receiving the gift of creation.
There's a lot there, but I'm going to go back into the chaos, because in the words of the mighty Stephen Jenkinson, the idea of the car as an option is over. And so, can we create the beauty that they put in those original vehicles? We can't, because there's a landfill with fucking tires and plastic and unused parts somewhere in the middle of Africa that's just getting filled up with shit. And it's like, no, we can't create cars that look like spaceships, because it's not fucking sustainable. I want to just like burst through, and I understand the sentiment of where you're coming from, but I want to, let's go in. Like,
so beauty is not merely an aesthetic. It's not about an appearance.
Yeah.
It includes the entire process of creation, because what you create is not only what ends up, on the road or in the showcase. It's everything that you do as a result of interacting with matter is a creation as well. The slag heaps, the tailings ponds, those are all creations as well.
But we know something about the creation. We know something about the creation now is what I'm in
yes,
kind of injecting into the conversation.
Yes, and as as we grow in understanding, what is beautiful to us changes.
Yes.
As our awareness grows, then our desire to enact beauty in all aspects of our creative process grows as well. So, and there are beautiful, aesthetic, elegant ways to deal with tires. For example, Zach Bush has invented a machine, basically a 40-foot long reactor where you feed the tires in one end, and it's based on, he built it based on his understanding of how mitochondria work, actually, breaking down polymers. You feed the tires in one end, or the plastic or whatever, but let's just take tires. And out the other end comes kerosene and carbon black, and almost nothing else. Carbon black, is useful for all kinds of things. The kerosene can be used as fuel, and he can do this with plastic. He can do it with agricultural waste. And this kind of invention, and I think he's actually making it, financially viable. But this kind of invention would be normal and ubiquitous if our culture were oriented toward beauty in every aspect of our creative process. We'd be, of course, we need this. I've been looking for this because I can't stand the side effects of my creative process being these landfills in Africa. So a cultural value on life and beauty will animate the right kinds of inventions that, make Stephen Jenkinson's objection obsolete. And we might also not choose cars anymore.
So I'm coming with the awareness that also healing is nonlinear, like we talked about. But I want to talk about the source of these tires. I don't know how we got on tires, but I'm here now. In Liberia, in Africa, in the 80s and 90s, men and women and children were put into slavery by the company called Firestone to source this rubber from the rubber plants, which Liberia has an abundance of. There is still slavery happening to make these tires. This is why. Zach Bush made a beautiful machine. There is beauty in it. But if we're not looking at the whole, if we're not looking at the whole of creation and all of that it takes, and I'm not putting this on myself, I'm not putting this on yourself, or even I'm not putting it on fucking Henry Ford. I'm putting it on the consciousness of us as humans. As we awaken, we have to know better. We have to do better. There's no excuse for us continuing to put people into slavery over fucking rubber tires. Let's get it together. It's an offering. People, let's get it together.
That doesn't mean that slavery is necessary to have rubber tires.
Absolutely not. I'm just saying we have to look at the system as a whole.
That's
before
right.
Before we can celebrate the beauty. I think something along those lines.
Right. Yep. The source and cradle to grave. It's all right. It's all part of it.
And I want the Cybertruck just like the next guy when Elon releases it. It's going to be the most beautiful truck ever made. And those precious metals, the conflict minerals that are utilized to make the batteries and all those things, that shit's still happening. And we have to be as conscious individuals say, hey, slavery isn't necessary, but goddamn, it's happening. I want to be real. I want to be as real as possible.
Right. And that's an aspect, if we value life and beauty, then that would be intolerable as well.
Yeah.
On some level, it's already intolerable, but we're shielded from seeing it by, an economic system that makes it invisible, and by an ideological system, and by habits, and the way the media works.
Yes.
I work with press at Team Kennedy, We haven't gotten a single press inquiry about conflict minerals. We haven't got a single press inquiry about amphibian die-off. We haven't gotten a single press inquiry about the decline of fisheries. I mean, the press inquiries we got a whole bunch of them about some fundraiser where this verbal altercation broke out and some guy farted. Multiple press inquiries about that.
Oh my God.
This is one thing I'm wanting to bring into the campaign is let's not settle for the currently defined issues as being what's important, because simply by dictating what the conversation shall be, we already exclude most of what is actually important in this world. All these beings that are ignored, they feed into the creeping ugliness of the environment of those who are doing the ignoring. Yeah. In other words, you can't actually keep the ugliness out.
Yeah.
It encroaches.
And I'd bring this directly to RFK Jr. You know, he's been super outspoken on the vaccines around COVID and previously around, the idea that vaccines and the chemicals and mercury and everything that's in them may have contributed to things like autism, and with good evidence. And so it's like, I applaud him because he's someone who's actually pointing out the ugly side, right. the kid who was actually harmed, the kid who's now living with this for the rest of his life and needs to be cared for the rest of his life. He's actually someone who's standing for them,
Yeah, it is really in a similar vein to his environmental work, which is really speaking for those who have no voice, speaking for those who are marginalized, who fall outside the calculations of power and profit. His environmental career was largely centered around cleaning up the Hudson River, suing polluters, suing regulatory agencies, and it expanded far beyond that, but that was the genesis of it. And, again, he got interested in the vaccine issue because all these moms started coming to him and saying, hey, you're trying to reduce coal emissions that put mercury into the air, but look, what about the mercury in these shots? Yeah. And, hearing these heartbreaking stories of mostly women, who, the typical story is my child was fine, thriving, got the MMR, screamed for 2 days, stopped making eye contact, stopped speaking. Yep. And, and you hear enough of these stories that, and then you wonder, well, why are they not being heard? Because then they say, I went to the doctor and the doctor said it was coincidence, and if you go to some of these forums, there are literally tens of thousands of stories like that that are not heard. And so, and then we get press fact checks, this has been debunked. And then you go into the actual studies that purport to have debunked them, and they were really shoddy. They only tested, one vaccine in kids who were otherwise fully vaccinated against everything else, so they got one fewer vaccine than everybody else. And so, of course, there's not much difference, and there's just but it goes down this rabbit hole that people are just not willing to go down. Because when they go down it and really look at the evidence and the research that has been done, you cannot just wave these people away as, oh, it's a hysterical mom. You have to actually dehumanize them in a way to ignore their testimony. And once you accept the authenticity of their testimony and their experience and their numbers, then that's what they call a red pill. Then all of the realities, belief systems that contain the validity of this key piece of modern medicine, they crumble as well. And then you're thrust into bewilderment. Who do I trust? What do I trust? What can I rely on?
And this is why we need the Sanity Project. This is why we need the Sanity Project, because there is so much confusion, right?
Yeah. Anyway, I was making the connection between that and environmental work, where it's the river, the forests, or the people downwind, the poor people downwind who are not, who are ignored. And so really what this is about, it's bringing back into our consciousness the things that have been banished and therefore harmed, made invisible. We have to bring them back, and it not just not as an act of charity or compassion, but also as an act of enrichment of life, of our own lives. Yes. Because we understand that we cannot be fully alive and in and take full delight in creation when we have to only turn our gaze to the decorated parts of it and avoid the strip mines and the slums. And because then we feel like, we're living in a phony world, in a world of representation. And the digital world is the extreme of that.
Absolutely.
Because it is a world of representation. We've been living in an ideological construct that blinds us to what's really happening on Earth.
Yes.
And the metaverse is the final distillation of this construct. And the idea is that you can, have online adventures and live in this perfect online world as if the physical world didn't exist. And that's the ambition. When Mark Zuckerberg talks about it, when Ray Kurzweil talks about it, like the idea that we'll be able to live in a simulation. And as you were saying, as we were saying earlier, the simulation doesn't include the essence of Charles. There's something missing. There's something missing in the digital world. And we got to get it back.
Yes.
We're hungry for it.
We're hungry for it, and it's right here. I said the land, the food, the people. It's not just the food that we're eating, and that needs attention too, but it's how are we nourishing ourselves? How are we nourishing each other? And so I had the privilege, to be in space with you. I got to feel your power. I got to feel your strength. I got to feel your emotion, and it's cool to talk to you on the other side now that, you've gotten to experience Sacred Son's work. I guess, we're 6 months or 8 months away from when we came into contact in that way. But is there anything that stands out for you about that, about being amongst the men, about really being in the reality of what it is to be human together?
It was a beautiful gathering. And it did, it drove home to me how beautiful and noble men are. And also how beautiful and noble human beings are, but specifically how beautiful and noble men are. That's not easily seen today. And I can't say I can't say that it was this, that, or the other thing that gave me that feeling. It was something kind of indefinable. But there was a real feeling of brotherhood, and a reawakening of our dormant commitment to serve and protect life, which is why we're really here. And maybe that commitment doesn't come out when we're all boxed up in separate domiciles and separate job descriptions and mediated through technology all the time. Maybe this flame only is kindled when the embers all are gathered together and generate enough heat. So it was something like that.
Yeah.
And it also maybe awakened my warrior spirit, which, is ready to make some sacrifices and take some risks, and let go of some things. I get communications from friends, who are like relaying to me, people asking them what happened to Charles Eisenstein. He's working for this, crazed anti-vaxxer now, or people like getting canceled for even being associated with me. Like I've become radioactive. And like partly it's like, when you throw your hat in the ring, like what is that hat? You're throwing, you could be hurt. You could be killed. Probably not literally, but figuratively in the you become a non-person in polite company. And
begin to become dehumanized in the same way that they dehumanize that they dehumanize anyone in their path. And that takes courage. That takes courage. That takes the spark.
And courage, I don't think courage is an individual quality.
Yeah.
I think that it's contagious. And it is a quality of heart, and we open each other's hearts. And when you witness somebody else being brave, you're like, what was I so afraid of? They're doing it. I can do it too.
Right.
Like I don't think I can be courageous or very courageous without my brothers who demonstrate to me that it's not crazy to take a stand and to make a sacrifice and to be impractical sometimes.
Yes. We get connected back to our bodies, back to our individual purpose and that collective purpose. That collective purpose which comes through collective courage. And I'm just going to re-say it again. In Charles's words, we're here for two purposes: to be awestruck by the magnificence of creation and to give forward from that nourishment into service to life. And so that's what we do when we come together. When we come out from beyond the veil of the digital simulation that's kind of been thrust into our lifetime, into our generation, how are we going to respond? And who's going to lead us there?
Yeah.
Who's going to lead us? I'm picking up my banner and what feels purposeful to me. I just want to say, as you come out of the simulation, is there any part of the boy, Charles Eisenstein, that's like, I'm a fucking advisor to a Kennedy? Come on, that's cool. No?
No, I'm not really doing it for that. No, I don't really get so much of a kick from that. It's because really, what good does that do me?
Yeah, maybe there's ego in that, but I like, listen, when I was growing up, I remember my mother telling me how she felt the day his uncle, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. It's been a part of the consciousness of American culture for a long time. In a time where UFOs are being revealed, in a time where we're looking back on why John F. Kennedy was actually killed. He didn't want to enter into Vietnam. He was holding the line. He was keeping the peace. And so all of this has been revealed, and now here we are. We're in the next iteration. Egos aside, I want to ignite that flame of holding the line and saying, we as human beings, as Americans, we have a boundary here, and it will not be dominated by corporate interests.
I mean, I do feel honored to be in this role as an advisor, but it's like, it really puts the question to me, okay, why am I really doing this?
Yeah.
And I don't want to squander this honor and put it in service to feeling important. Like, there's work to be done.
Yeah.
The rehearsal is over. That's one of my mantras these days.
Yes.
The rehearsal is over. This is for real. And, that has been quite a transition for me, because especially when you're in the digital realm, it kind of seems like whatever mistake I make, it doesn't matter that much. It's just something on a screen. And when we're immersed in a world that is portrayed to us on screens, it doesn't seem real. Like, that's why I think some of the horrors happening on Earth have lost their shock value, because they are indistinguishable from the horrors that we see in the movie theater that are fake.
Right.
From like a certain perspective, it's all stuff on a screen. And we discount the reality very, very naturally of, Deadpool or Avengers Endgame or something where these absolutely heinous atrocities are happening, to a minute in front of our eyes. Like, we develop a defense mechanism against that. And that defense mechanism then applies to anything on a screen. And it's hard to connect with the physicality of what's really going on. Yeah. It's all a show. It's the society of the spectacle. And that is another reason why I think that the work that you do at Sacred Sons is so valuable. It's very physical. It's very gritty. And the information that men receive there is not what we think of as information in the information age, where it can be reduced to data, where sanity, and this is one of the themes I'm working with in the Sanity Project too, it's not about receiving the correct ideas. There's a lot of information that is not ideas and is not data. And that is what you're bringing. Like, we almost can't talk about it. And maybe you even have rules about not talking about some of the practices that go on there. That's not because of some fetish for secrecy. That's because they literally cannot be talked about.
Yes.
They are not their representation. They're real. And you try to fit them into concepts and descriptions, and they are no longer the same thing. Like, you have to be there. And so the invitation to go must be transmitted through some other way. And so I Adam, I honor you. I honor what you're doing. It's important. It's fed me. And I wish you the continued courage to keep bringing it forth in the world.
Yes. Thank you, my brother. I need encouragement too, and so I really appreciate it. And when you reach out and you share with me kind of those heart open messages, it really lands for me and lets me know that I'm on the right path. And I appreciate that greatly. And I want you to know I'm in this. I'm in this for life. I'm in this for the long run. I'm in it because I received the vision and we received the vision, that the men need the work. The men need to get back into their bodies and to reconnect. And until the men do that, we won't have safety for the women and children. And so this is the mission that we're on. Again, I want to just send it back. Currently, you've got the Sanity Project. Head over to charleseisenstein.org. Check out the Sanity Project. If you're one who's out there wondering what's real and needing kind of like that first step back into a grounded place, check out the Sanity Project. Otherwise, Charles is on Substack with some incredible writings. Charles, with that, is there any final message or thoughts that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening?
I think I've said what I want to say. And in the Sanity Project, I don't want to compare it to Sacred Sons. I mean, the work you do is so much deeper. But, I'm seeking to use the tools available for what they're useful for. So I think people are finding value in it. And I just want to, again, thank you, Adam, and thank everybody for their attention and receptivity. And I just hope that, some of what I've said resonates as true and that you hold that valuable.
Beautiful. Charles, until next time, look forward to seeing all the beauty that you create out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam.
And there's an open invite. Anytime you see us out there, you're welcome.
Yeah. Sorry I can't come this year, but I will come again someday.
I'd love to get you and Zach. I just feel like it would ignite these brothers to bring some of the forward thinking, some of the future technology. And also, I appreciate how Zach's bringing it back to the health and wellness. So we'd love to get you guys out there.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Zach and I have such good synergy. That'd be awesome to do that someday.
We'll make it happen. Until then, Charles Eisenstein, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family.